Gigantische Zahlen am Goldmarkt. Was war hier los in den letzten Tagen? Und jetzt steigt sogar der größte ETF-Fonds wieder ein. Und trotzdem Stand heute sinkt plötzlich wieder dieser Goldpreis. Also wird hier doch an der Stellschraube sehr, sehr heftig manipuliert, damit man bloß nicht erkennt, was für ein Schicksal auf uns zukommt. Sind das schon die Vorboten von großen Veränderungen im Finanzmarkt? Guten Tag, mein Name ist Bernd Vetter und ich möchte mit diesem Video und den Ausschnitten von einem Video vom Herrn Egon von Greyerz, dem Chef von der Firma Matterhorn in der Schweiz, Ihnen ein paar Informationen zur Hand geben, die vielleicht nicht nur mich, vielleicht auch Sie zum Nachdenken anregen sollten. Ich bin kein Finanzdienstleister, bin im 73. Lebensjahr. Einfach mal anschauen und dann vielleicht selber die eigene Situation überprüfen.
The way to finance debts is such a situation and to get people to actually commit money to buying treasuries, that's by starting a war. Then you can raise more money.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Egon von Greyerz. Time for our monthly von Greyerz interview. Egon, great to see you. Finally, everything happens what we were expecting in a really deteriorating environment. Nevertheless, good to see you. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much, Jan. And yes, good to be back. There'll be a lot to talk about, not just today, but for the whole of this year, I think, Jan, because it's happening gradually, but still slowly. But there will be some major events coming later during this year, I'm quite certain.
I heard once this telling slowly, but then suddenly. Egon,
Yeah.
one thing of many came true. The inflation persists or remains higher than anticipated. Let's begin with that. Inflation in the US, as measured by the change in the CPI, rose 3.2% on a yearly basis in February from 3.1% in January. The BLS reported on Tuesday annual core CPI, which includes volatile food and energy prices, increased 3.8% in the same period, below the January increase of 3.9%, but above the market forecast of 3.7%. And I continue with this here. The producer price index for final demand rose 0.6% last month after advancing by an unrevisioned 0.3% in January, the Labor Department's Bureau of Labor Statistics said on Thursday. Economists polled by Reuters had forecasted the PPI climbing 0.3%. A 1.2% jump in the prices of goods accounted for nearly 2/3 of the increase in the PPI. Goods prices were driven by energy products, which surged 4.4% after declining 1.1% in January. Egon, it seems exactly what we were expecting happens. The inflation comes back. It remains stronger than the politicians and the Fed obviously thought. And yes, as we said, what came out of the bottle is not going to go back, right?
Yes, this talk about, well, first of all, as you know, when inflation was under 2, they said they wanted up to 2, and then it went up a lot higher than 2, up to 7-8% in most countries or more. And then they say they're going to put it back to 2 again. They have got no tools to change inflation. This is political or events outside their political sphere that actually makes inflation move. The interest rates have a very only nominal effect on inflation. So they think now it's going down to 2% again. Of course it isn't. My strong view is that inflation will remain high. on a global basis, together with interest rates. And this now, of course, excluding food and energy is ridiculous also in these figures, because that's everybody eats something and everybody uses fuel, and they're a major part of most people's spending. So we have a temporary reduction in inflation, although last month, as you said, it was higher, but you're still talking about annualized. If you take 0.4% for the month, I mean, that's still almost 5% for the year. So it's still much higher than they intended to be. Inflation is here to stay on a global basis. Commodity prices will continue to go up, food prices will go up, and oil and fuel in general will also continue up. So the whatever reduction we've seen now is not going to last.
But at least, Egon, they use these higher inflation numbers to increase the fear that the Fed might not lower the interest rates as expected. They are still playing the market. And I have here an interesting observation in an article by Zero Hedge, Egon. The ETFs that used to accumulate gold, they continue to lose gold while the gold price is rising. We are close to a record high. In my view, Egon, a very strong development, and I think it shows there is a good chunk of distract into those vehicles. We see here the gold price increasing, obviously, and the holdings, the ETF holdings, decreasing, continue to decrease.
This is a very bullish sign. You have then funds and ETFs who have been selling gold since 2000, middle of 2000, and in spite of a rising price, they're totally on the wrong side of gold. But of course, the main buyers of gold currently are the BRICS countries and the central banks, and they are obviously ignoring what investors are doing short term. There will be a point when all of these funds and the ETFs will turn around. And once they turn around, they will be with the trend for a change now, which they haven't been for the last 3-4 years. And that will obviously put more fire on the gold price. So, that development, I think, is what we're seeing, those two graphs are very bullish for gold. Gold is at a high and nobody's buying it, except for, as I said, BRICS and the central banks. That's an extremely bullish sign. And of course, the central banks, when they buy gold, they don't buy in the market, they buy off market always. So they don't even, they only influence the price on the margin. Still, as I said, there's not so much gold around, and what is now available for purchase for these central banks in the BRICS countries is putting upward pressure on gold. And that's just the beginning, Jan. It's just the very beginning.
Another very interesting graph in this article, Egon, we know that the crypto and especially Bitcoin.
Ja, diesen Artikel habe ich dazu gefunden, wie über die Schweiz die Zentralbank der Welt mit Gold bedient werden. Die Fed hatte also ihre Versammlung, die Zinsen bleiben so, wie sie sind. Früher war das so, dass dann viele Mittel in Anleihen geflossen sind und der Goldpreis sank, aber hier nicht mehr im Moment in dieser Situation, der Goldpreis steigt trotzdem. Die meisten wissen nicht warum. Und jetzt plötzlich am 20.03. steigen die großen ETFs wieder ein und kaufen massiv Gold. Lesen Sie selbst. Ja, hier sehen Sie jetzt am 20.03. auf der Tabelle diese Zukäufe von diesem ETF-Fonds. Also das heißt, Sie wollen hier an den steigenden Preisen partizipieren und gehen nicht mehr short. Der nächste Abschnitt von Egon von Greyerz behandelt den Aktienmarkt.
They are still high, something smells there. Okay, they are driven by AI stocks, but some mighty insiders are cashing out. Jeff Bezos sold Amazon shares worth of 8.5 billion in multiple transactions this month. That was in February. Meanwhile, Jamie Dimon, CEO and chairman of JP Morgan Chase, sold 150 million in stock last week. His first cashing out since taking the top job at the bank 18 years ago. Around the same time, Leon Black, co-founder and former CEO of Apollo Global Management, shed 172.8 million in stock, also a first ever stock sale. Similarly, the Trust for the Walton family, heirs of Walmart's founder, sold 1.5 billion in Walmart stock this month. Again, that was in February, but at least a small sign that they take precautions, while Joe Sixpack is still fully invested.
Well, you know my view about the stock market, Jan. The stock markets are at the most incredible levels, bubble levels. I think that during this year, and you never know when it will happen, but during this year, we will see crashes in stock markets around the world. They're overvalued dramatically. The US market is being carried by 7 stocks, mainly tech stocks, but you know they are the Amazons, the Apples, etc. Google. Otherwise, the US stock market is not going up. And at some point, we will have the reversal, and that will take everyone by surprise. And this is why some of the clever investors that you're showing, who understand what's happening, they're cashing in. They're right to cash in, because once this starts, no one knows where it will end, but you know, I think 50% is a minimum, and I could see markets going down by 70, 80, or even 90% in the coming years. We don't know when it's going to happen. Could start strongly this year. The important thing is not to try to time it, but actually to protect yourself where you still can, because once the markets start going, nobody's going to sell, or they will sell on the margin, but most investors will hold on and wait for the market to correct. And that correction will never be big enough for people to actually sell them. So a lot of investors will ride this market all the way to the bottom. And that's very sad when there is a very good chance of actually preserving your wealth now and turning some of that stock market gain into real money, which obviously is gold, physical gold.
And I find
Ja, diese Maßnahmen von diesen reichen Menschen oder Familien sollte uns allen zu denken geben. Denn was geschieht, wenn man zu spät seine sogenannten Wertpapiere veräußert? A, bekommt man weniger wie heute in Fiatgeld ausgezahlt, und B, sind natürlich dann die Einstiegspreise bei Gold oder Silber immens viel teurer, also höher. Deswegen aufpassen und reagieren, solange es noch möglich ist. Jetzt das nächste Kapitel beleuchtet Egon von Greyerz die Sache mit diesem Bitcoin.
a very interesting graph in this article, Egon. We know that the crypto and especially Bitcoin had an incredible bull run. Let's see what happened. Obviously, many new ETFs were registered or allowed to start trading, and that drew a lot of money into Bitcoin. We see here ETF flows and the repetition of what we just saw, the outflows in gold. And nevertheless, the gold price is rising, although we saw this big distraction and the inflow into Bitcoin, another very strong sign for this gold bull market to me.
Well, you know, this is a totally different market. And now, of course, since Bitcoin is continuing to go up, now banks have to get into it, funds have to get into it, and ETFs are created for Bitcoin. I'm still of this same opinion. It's a wonderful speculative vehicle, serves no purpose. It doesn't, from the point of view of replacing gold. It'll never replace gold. It's just an entry on a computer. That's all Bitcoin is. It's got no intrinsic value. Gold has intrinsic value, and remember, half of gold production is gone into jewelry, and some goes into industrial. So we have the history of gold. So also, which is 5,000 years old against 14 years of Bitcoin. Bitcoin, fantastic for the people who invested in Bitcoin, made a lot of money. My target is still, it could be 1 million or it could be 0, because what central banks decide to do. And therefore, it's not a good investment, and it's a high risk, and it's incredibly volatile, not suitable at all as money or as a replacement for gold. So good luck to the speculators, and I hope they make a lot of money, and I hope also that they get out at the right time. But anyway, it's nothing to do with wealth preservation, as we've always been saying. Yeah.
At least some competition for fiat money, but the litmus test still has to come when there is a hack or a big blackout. We will see what happens then. The gold you have, the real gold, is something completely different. But let me come back to this article, Egon. There is another graphic that I'd like to show.
Ja, lesen Sie selbst, was ich bei YouTube-Kanälen hier für Fragen gestellt hat und welche Antworten ich bis jetzt dazu bekommen habe. Es ist schon seltsam, dass nicht mehr Antworten dazu kommen.
Increase in the gold price despite the fact of this massive inflow into crypto, the stock market still at record high. This is really amazing. If once there is a panic in the market, and for sure it will be, in a second I show some insanity charts. Once this panic hits in, we will see completely different movements than now. By now, it's really a calm market, and as you say, nobody is having gold, or only some crazy people, us included, but far away from any panic.
Well, you're absolutely right. And what has happened so far is this is not a precious metals rally. It's not a speculative rally into precious metals. This is so far we've seen a rally in gold. And that rally in gold is because of geopolitical and world economic events, not because people are now rushing into precious metals, because gold is the king of metals, and gold is now being bought by central banks and by the BRICS countries, because they know that they need to actually hold gold to protect themselves in what's going to happen in debt markets and in currency markets. But general investors haven't actually cottoned on to that, because they're still into their stock market investments. And therefore, as I said, it's been interesting. It's been primarily a gold move. I think silver and mining stocks at some point will catch up. But so far, they're way behind, because, as I said, this is a fundamental secular change in the gold market and not in the precious metals market. That's what people's got to realize.
Egon, let's have a look at the problems that Joe Sixpack or normal people face. And this is mounting debt. And mounting debt and still relatively high interest rates make it more and more difficult to buy your gold and to take precautions. Here we have the credit cards, new record high above 1 trillion. The mortgage debt also increasing, auto or car loans increasing. And finally, the US total state debt is now at 34.5 trillion. So it's totally out of control. And as we always say, use the time while you still can. It can only become more expensive.
What I mean, these are frightening figures, and they're increasing now. That curve is getting steeper and steeper, which means that debt is increasing exponentially. And we both know that the U.S. deficits are going to run into now annually at trillions. So the debt will grow even further, and as no foreign buyers of U.S. treasuries are interested in holding treasuries anymore, it means that the only one who can actually finance the U.S. extravagances or deficits is actually the U.S. government or the Fed itself. So the US government has to issue the bonds and the Fed has to buy the bonds. That means that is just banana republic paper with zero value. And that will becomes a vicious spiral with debt going up further and further. And therefore also interest rates will have to go up because no one's going to lend to the US government at these low rates. So it'll be much higher interest rates and spiraling debt. A horrible situation for the world that we are now going to see in the
Noch eine Erklärung. Warum wird hier immer nur der US-Markt gezeigt? Ja, weil es natürlich der mächtigste Markt ist und natürlich auch die noch Leitwährung in der Welt. Und wir hier in Europa mit unserem Euro sind auch nur eine Nebenwährung des Dollars. Und wir hängen da dran, wie an der Nadel. Und Sie wissen ja selber, wie unsere Sektenpolitiker eigentlich unbedingt mehr Schulden machen wollen und müssen für ihre Programme durchziehen. Und neue Schulden bedeuten immer neue Inflation. Das ist vollkommen klar. Ja, das müssen wir erkennen.
When a political party with no visible leader that has power, because Biden doesn't have the power anymore. That's his underlings that have the power. When they are actually running the world geopolitical situation, and a country which is bankrupt on top of that, that means that we can have very dangerous events coming in this year and thereafter. So this is what investors, we don't know what's going to happen. We only know that the risk is of a magnitude that people have to protect themselves. And this is why we come back to gold. Gold is not a solution to everything. Of course it isn't. It's not going to solve the geopolitical problems. It's not going to solve the world financial problem. But individual investors can at least ensure some of their wealth by holding on to the only money that has survived in history and is not as volatile as stock markets or bond markets or property